Well, I want to talk to you basically about three things. I handed you an outline, or our folks handed an outline out to you, and there are two main topics, and then I want to cover a workshop that we're going to be having in Indianapolis for grassroots conservatives, limited government, small government, liberty folks, and we would like to invite some of you. You are self-electing as leaders, okay, because you realize you gave up a Saturday morning to come to a workshop on how to change the government. And that makes you not normal. Right? So we'll get to more on the seminar in a little bit, but the two topics that I want to cover generally are how can you make an impact as an activist, really move the needle. That's not a digital term, that's an old term, but I got involved here to get some wins. I want to move the needle. And so we want to focus on the right way to do that. We'll do that a little bit today and also at that seminar. And then the second topic is on messaging, because we conservatives, we small government liberty types, we have some, I don't know if they're genetic disorders, but they're serious problems that we have on messaging. And I want to address those with you because the other side just laps us when it comes to messaging. So first of all, making an impact as an activist. You have really two approaches when it comes to the politicians and the bureaucracy. And the first one is the seat at the table approach, and that's where you try to make friends with the politicians and the other influential folks, and you end up sort of putting them up on a pedestal, and maybe you volunteer at your local party. You can fold the napkins for the big dinner. And what they do is they're figuratively patting you on the head and telling you, work hard, be loyal, maybe sometime down the road we'll clear you and you could run for office or do something influential in that way. Now, the other way that you can have that seat at the table is by having a lot of money that you give to the right politicians. Okay, that also gets you a seat at the table. The problem with the seat at the table approach is it doesn't tend to work with the controversial issues where we need to move the needle if we're really going to change the culture in this country. Education being only one of the many problems that we have. Okay, the access model works if you're trying to get some kind of tax wrinkle worked into a bill that would benefit your company or your industry. The access model works pretty well for that. It doesn't work for these controversial issues like what's going to happen with our kids over this education scheme. So what I advocate is instead the confrontational approach to politics. And I want to give you examples of how that works. It's not a theory that I invented on my own. I've shamelessly poached this from other conservative activists over the years. And you have several fine books that you can choose over here on the sideboard. The one that I brought with me, again, I did not write it, but it's called Confrontational Politics, and it's written by a former state senator from California. His last name is Richardson. Retails $12.95 for this book. I'm selling them for $6, so you can pick up a copy of it. He was a state senator in California when Ronald Reagan was governor, and he stayed for 20 odd more years and made a great deal of impact, even though his party was in the minority the whole time. Okay, but the first key, we need to make three shifts in our mind if we want to impact politics with respect to the confrontational approach. And the first one is item A that I have on this outline, and that is elections. Elections are vital. Now, some of the earlier speakers talked about the politicians and others in Columbus maybe zoning out or tuning out after about 10 minutes. Let me tell you how you get them to tune right back in. You beat someone in an election. Okay? Because when one of their buddies gets beat in an election, there's something awesome that happens. It's not only that night on the television, because that'll be a big enough hubbub, but in the days and weeks after that, that legislator will have to go back to Columbus and clean out their desk and put their things into a cardboard box. And when the other legislators, their office mates, see old Tim putting his things into a cardboard box because Sally beat him and he doesn't get to play anymore and be one of the cool kids, that makes an indelible impact in the minds of those other legislators. Because they don't want to be like Tim. Okay? So that's very important. Now, a lot of us are going to be fighting our nature. Our nature, many of you are probably Christians. I'm a Christian. We're taught in our nature we're not supposed to be confrontational. Okay? And in fact, the opposition will even use this against us. If you begin to push back against the leftist, their confrontational tactics. And they will say, well, you're not being very nice. Jesus loved everybody. What would Jesus do? Okay? Now, whenever someone asks me that question, I remind them that all 4 Gospels recount at least one episode where Jesus found injustice, flipped over tables, and cleared the entire room with a whip. Yep. And he also said, by the way, I came to divide. So he did preach love, but sometimes love means confrontation. So I would urge you to fight through that if you are feeling like you cannot be confrontational. It is vital to us winning. I want to give you a little background on myself. In addition, I do practice what I preach. I'm involved in electoral politics in addition to working with the grassroots. Last year in Indiana, I managed a campaign for a state legislator. We had the primary challenge, the incumbent, over Common Core, among other issues, and we won. We won a big victory. We were outspent about 10-1, and we did a grassroots campaign, involved a lot of volunteers from the area. One of the local newspapers wrote, they praised our campaign for its skill and precision. They also called our candidate relentless. The opposition candidate, however, did not see things the same way, and these are just some of the words that the opposition candidate herself described our campaign. She said we were despicable, cowardly, hateful, horrible, terrible, vicious, and unchristian. The Indiana Chamber of Commerce, who worked very hard to keep the incumbent in office so that they would keep getting what they wanted, they became so desperate and unhinged during the campaign that they accused our candidate of treason. So they didn't just say, don't vote for him, right? Treason's capital crime punishable by death. They said, don't just vote against this individual. He should be killed just for daring to challenge our incumbent. So again, back to the confrontation, understand there's a very powerful structure in place on the other side that likes having their way. And when you disrupt things for them, they're going to become frustrated. All right? This will possibly impact friendships with your neighbors. Right? Things might get awkward at church. But you got to remember your kids are at stake and they're trying to use those feelings that you have against you. So again, I urge you to push through those. Now, the second, so we've covered elections. Elections are vital. You have got to change who's in these seats. Which ones though? The second leap of faith or leap of thinking that we need to make is we have got to have our focus be local. Okay? To have an impact as activists. I spent most of my adult life focusing on presidency, U.S. Senate, U.S. House, governor's mansion. I considered all the rest of it to be small ball under that, and I really didn't pay attention. That's what the major parties want us to do, is to only be focused on those big ones because we don't have as much impact on those. Okay? Now I know you all vote here in the presidential primary earlier. You're in March. Okay? In Indiana, this is an easier sell for me because we don't vote until May, even in a presidential year. And so I can share with my fellow Hoosiers. I don't spend that much time. I'll vote in the spring and the fall for president, but I don't spend any time thinking about who the next president's going to be because I can't move the needle on that one. Okay? I can't. There are hundreds of millions of dollars flying around. I can't do anything about that. So even though you're here, you're maybe part of Super Tuesday or really close to that, if you want to be involved at the presidential level, frankly, you need to become an activist and move to Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina, or there are 3 or 4 really early states that get a disproportionate say in that. All right? But this is a giant shiny object for the next year and a half, and I implore you not to get sucked in by the giant shiny object of who the Republican nominee is going to be. Now, I have my preferences, okay? I know who I don't want. There were some people up on the screen here that I know I don't want. But again, it isn't up to me. I can't move the needle on that one. But I demonstrated that I can help. It wasn't just me, but I can help get a state legislator unelected and another one elected. So you keep your mind where you can make an impact, okay? And the math on this is daunting. There are 300 million people in the United States, 11.5 million people in Ohio as of the 2010 census. You have 16 congressional seats in this state. Okay, so back up. For any statewide offices, governor or U.S. Senate, it's a playing field of 11.5 million people. Now, fewer of them will vote, of course, but that's your electorate. For your 16 congressional seats are 720,000 Buckeyes for every congressional member in this state. You have 33 state Senate seats, so now we're down to 350,000 people per state Senate seat, state Senate district. So the math's getting a little better for us. For state house, you have 99 state representatives in your state house, state assembly. So 117,000 Buckeyes that's the constituency of every state legislator. And then from there you boil it down to who's registered and who's likely to vote and all that good stuff. And it becomes very manageable for a small group. Our group that elected that state legislator, it was less than a dozen people that initially met and decided this is the right thing to do. We're going to do this. We're going to get organized and make this happen. A very small group of people can make a change like that. And finally, we come down to school board, making it even more local. There are only a few thousand people typically in a district for school board. We're talking about a few hundred votes. Last fall, Dawn Kazmierzak, an earlier speaker, and she introduced me to a friend of hers who was running for school board at the high school where I graduated. And I was running this other campaign, but I agreed to take a meeting, and so at Dawn's home one evening in September, met with this school board candidate and her campaign manager. Now, she was up against an incumbent who had a shorter name, an easier to pronounce name, a family business in town, extremely well known and liked throughout the community, but he also was getting along to go along with Common Core, and she was going to run against him. So we spent about 2.5 hours talking about campaign basics of things that she and her tiny band of volunteers needed to do, and working uphill with all of those factors. She beat him 58-42 on election day, and they're still trying to figure out on that school board how that happened. Okay? That's using these principles that we're going to be teaching in Indianapolis in June. So again, that's our second shift in thought, is we need to begin. It's both humbling and liberating to realize that you can't do anything about the presidency. So quit worrying about it. And besides, I tell people this too: if you think Obama is our only problem, you're not paying attention. Okay? So you do things you can do things you can impact at your level, and that means local. The third shift in thought that we need to make here is we have got to focus on primaries. All right? Too many people think that election day is in November. For y'all in Ohio here, in a presidential year, election day's in March. Okay, in a non-presidential year like 2014 was, election day's in May. All right, because that's when the playing field is set. And once you know who the nominees are, the vast majority of Ohio, like most other states, like Indiana, is sufficiently gerrymandered by the wiles of the legislature, or just it's gerrymandered by where people happen to live. They have habits of party voting and all that stuff, that unless somebody gets caught in a horrible scandal, not a garden variety scandal, but a horrible over-the-top scandal, you can predict with certainty probably 95 to 98% of those contests of who's going to win in the fall. So if you want to impact this, you must impact the selection in the primary. When it's a free-for-all, and it might be 2 Republicans or 5 Democrats, or whoever it is trying to get those nominations for the 2 seats. So that's vital. You got to be involved in the nominee selection. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about, that we'll belabor this more at the campaign training, but this is on messaging. We have got to do a better job on the right, the limited government folks, of our messaging. There are three keys to this really, and the first one is item A that you have on your note, and that is mobilization. Way too many of my conservative friends, when they get involved, whether it's Common Core, whatever the issue is, they get pumped up because they've read the books and the pamphlets, they're very sure this is wrong, and they are convinced I'm going to educate all of my friends, everyone in my community, until we swing this thing over our way. And so maybe you've been unlucky enough to stand next to one of these people at a cocktail party, and you happen to say the wrong thing, giving them an entreaty, and for the next 45 minutes, they're going to try and tell you everything they know about that subject, okay? And that's not the way we win these. It is not. Now again, you folks came here, you gained a ton of information this morning, you probably already knew a great deal about this before you got here, but like I said in my opener, we are not normal. We gave up a Saturday to come to a political workshop. If you doubt me on that, if you doubt me, here is your test. You go to the nearest Walmart or Piggly Wiggly grocery store in your hometown, and I want you to ask 100 people who come by, excuse me, ma'am, do you know who our state senator is? No. Sir, do you know who our state senator is? And you write down the answers that they give you, you will be humbled very quickly as that we are the ones who are not normal. Okay? You will get people who will say, you know, John Glenn, who hasn't been U.S. Senator here in a long time. You will get people who is currently the U.S. Senator. You will give some people who will give senators from other states. Vice President might come up. I mean, you will get a lot of names that will not be accurate, and that will teach you that we're the ones who are not normal. But the point is, with mobilization, and this is taught again in this book, we have to go on messaging, whether it's an election campaign or a campaign to get something done in a community like a referendum or something. We have to go to where the voters already are and already care and hit their button. Okay, so for example, I just grabbed this t-shirt, so I have these as a sample. Y'all, on these black t-shirts back there, they have several items about Common Core. What are you biting into? Untested, data mining, sex ed K-12, increased cost, increased testing, no parental control, unfunded mandate, no board control, corporate financial gain, developmentally inappropriate. I don't know which one of those are going to turn out to be the main ones or one that will be the hot button for the electorate, but you need to drill down to 2 is optimal. You don't want more than 3. Okay? Conservatives, limited government folks, we're famous for having an 11-point plan to achieve what we want or to convince people. This leads into my second point, actually, focus. We got to find ones where it touches their hot button. And the idea is, whether it's local control or the data mining, you test it, and you want the one where when you go up to parents and you say, did you know that the Ohio schools allow for there to be no parental control now? You want them to immediately say, what? Do people know about this? And then scurry off to tell their friends. That is your mobilization issue right there. You now know how to reach the people's hot button. Also, you just converted somebody. They're helping you. You have someone else carrying your message. Okay? So it's not patiently explaining for 45 minutes. You have found where they are, and you have hit their hot button. Right? That's mobilization. By the way, Senator Richardson's details in here, they used mobilization to elect a pro-gun state legislator in San Francisco. Okay? Now that takes some doing. They knew what they were doing. It's only 110 pages. It's a very good read. And by the way, Dawn made this point earlier. I have notes in the margins. I have this thing starred. I have it marked up. One of my college professors, he was a leftist, but he did give me one good tip. He said, the resale value of books is nothing. It's $0.25 for a paper book back, or maybe $1 for a hardback. Take this and make it yours. All right? Don't treat books you read as these pristine things that you wouldn't, mark it up. That was his famous say, mark it up. So underline, make notes, and when you come back, you'll find what you wrote. Turn it into your workbook. Focus. Again, that's the second point, and I hinted to it earlier. We can't have 11 of these things. We got to find the 2 or 3 that are really getting people fired up, and we stick with those. All right? And that leads me right into the third point, which is repetition. Okay? If you're doing this right, whatever the campaign is, if it's a campaign to pass an initiative, campaign to elect somebody, campaign to unseat somebody, you and your core band of merry supporters are going to be tired of the stump speech, whatever stump speech you're giving to get that person elected or get that campaign passed. But the people that you're talking to that day are only hearing it for the first or second time. All right? So you have to be careful. One other point on the focus. There will be a number of parties that will try and distract you from your focus once you think you've got these points that you want to hit. The media will try to distract you on your focus. Okay, what about this? You have to fight through that and pivot right back to your main points. The opposition will definitely try to distract you from your focus. And when they start whining that you only talk about these two things, you know you're getting to them. Okay? When the opposition is crying about your tactics, you are getting to them. And also your friends. If you stay on focus, your friends are going to become agitated. And here's why. Okay, this is something I heard Heidi talked about unity earlier, and it's so important. In the grassroots conservative movement, you start making an impact in politics, you start getting something done on Common Core, there's going to be a leader 2 counties over in Umpty Frutz County who's a leader, but they've never accomplished anything with their group. Okay? Nothing. They wave signs and maybe wear their shirts and they come together and eat a chili dog and talk about how bad the government is, and they go off into the night, and 2 weeks later they come back and do the same thing. That's not a problem for that leader until someone nearby does start making an impact. And now, can you see the problem for that leader? Their people might notice, hey, why over in Putnam County are they getting something done? Why aren't we getting something done? And then these jealousies start to come out. And the idea being, we'll claw you back down so that we're all ineffective equally. So you do need to be prepared for that, unfortunately, even in the conservative and the liberty movement. But you can fight through all of those things. You can make sure your messaging is working for you. And again, elections are a key. You have on the back of this sheet, you have the flyer for this training in Indianapolis. There's not a cost for it. We are going to take a free will donation, and you have to pick up your own lunch. It's going to be held in a meeting room in a cafeteria. And it's got invitation only, but that is so that chamber types don't drift into to take our training. They already know this stuff. We're the ones that need to know this stuff. So I want conservative activists to come to this training. So if you are interested, there's an email there. My email and phone number are on the front of the sheet if you have follow-up questions for me later. And I'll also be part of the Q&A on the panel. So thank you.